And away we go. It's the DFS Deliver presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS as well. We'll get to more on them momentarily. Dan Strever, Chris Randone with you on this Monday morning or maybe late Sunday evening. Maybe you tanked out in NFL and you're like, hell, I need something. I'm going to listen to the early bird to get ready for baseball on Monday. Chris, our first weekend of football is behind us. The Pats and Steelers playing now. Screw the Pats. Screw Antonio Brown. That's coming from a Jets fan. But anyway, how the hell are you doing?
Oh, man, the Jets today. Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing, Dan. Things are just not – today was just one of those days where, it just got me in so many directions. But we were up 16-0. And then he misses the extra point, and then they just collapse on defense. Once again, it's one of the Jets blues, man. It's just what we go through.
Yes, it is. And same old Jets is a phrase for a reason. They didn't invest in the offensive line. They didn't invest in a kicker. And here we are with Sam Darnold getting rushed much more. And the Bills are a good defense. I don't want to make it sound like it was just because of the Jets offensive line. This is a potentially top 5, top 7 defense when all is said and done in the NFL. But this is a game the Jets have to win. It's a game where Le'Veon Bell is doing his best Superman impersonation, and you got to get that W. And the kicker situation is not very good. Not Parkey level. It's not the Bears, but the Jets have not done a good job of keeping solid kicking options on their roster over the years. We're going to talk Major League Baseball here on the podcast. You have tons of free and paywalled content when it comes to the NFL. There are tons of NFL strategy shows over there on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. You hit the alarm bell. This way you know every time we go live. But also you get projections. You get Fantasy Cruncher add-on. That's all behind the paywall. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD for 50% off your first month over at Awesemo. That is called Awesemo Plus, which is our premium offering. You can check all the information out over at Awesemo.com for that. Pretty decent slate here. There are some fairly large contests on DK and FanDuel and our sponsor site, Yahoo. And don't forget, they do have management-free tournaments, rake-free tournaments, so you can keep that cash hopefully in the back pocket and find some extra dollars in the prize pool as well. You also want to check out their NFL offerings. They had their millionaire maker. I guess that's probably patent pending by one of the sites, but they have a Millie that is $25 and is management fee free. So you'll want to check that out, see what they have offered for week number 2. With that said, we are going to dive in. There are some decent sized contests. I will say it doesn't look as though the sites have done the big tournaments the day after the first week of NFL. We've seen in the past where they've thrown lots of money back out there on the Monday after. There's some decent sized prize pools, nothing absolutely astonishing, mainly at the lower end. Typically it's between $3 and $9. Some really big tournaments try to churn the NFL winnings. Not nearly as much this year, Chris. Seems like they've dialed it back a little bit. Probably see even more thrown into the NFL for week number 2.
Yeah, today too, I thought there would be at least some decent MLB lineups that I wanted to hammer, but as of this morning, I just kind of shied away from it. There was nothing that was appealing. So tomorrow, though, looking at it, it's not the same that we usually see with the MLB schedule, but on DraftKings they do have the $18 $50K first place. So that's always a good tournament, and they always have the mini max going. So a little bit shorter of a mini max this time, only 23,000 people. First place is 2,000. So no matter what, though, there's not too much football tomorrow. So I'm going to be going back to the board in baseball. I'm excited to get back into the diamond tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be right there with you. We're going to dive in here as we go through the pitching options, as we always do here on the DFS Early Bird. And then we'll talk a little bit about the top stacks. But obviously, as we talk through the top pitchers, you'll hear which offenses you should stay away from, or at least at first glance here. And then you'll sort of default to who we'll be on. We start at the top. Shane Bieber has been really, really great this year. We were talking before we started recording about how great his numbers honestly are. 233 strikeouts, and yes, it is boom or bust in Major League Baseball. Home runs or strikeouts, so 200-plus strikeouts for Bieber may not be what it was 10 years ago, but still, this guy has been very, very, very good and deserves the price tag at 11.7. But for me, Chris, this matchup against the Angels, just not enough Ks, too good an offense to pay that much for Bieber. Are you in agreement here, or do you see on a shorter slate, 8 games, that maybe there's some upside to him even at 11.7?
Yeah, so when you look on the year, the Angels are one of the most disciplined teams at the plate. They don't strike out much. They draw a lot of walks. However, though, last 45 days, they are in the top 13 of strikeout percentage. So they went from the 17-18% range that we've seen earlier in the year to now it's up to 23%. And I'm not trying to state my case for Bieber, but I will say that there are a little bit more strikeouts as of late in the lineup compared to earlier in the year. So I think cash game, I think it's more than okay to go ahead and roster Bieber in this situation. Once again, I mean, there's just too much talent there. He'll find ways to get strikeouts. And, when you have a pitcher like that, usually sometimes they pay off more than usual. So he has faced Los Angeles earlier in the year. And yet it was actually a complete game. So 35.8 DraftKings points. That's what you want out of 11K pitchers. So I don't mind it. When it comes to tournaments, though, I will say probably going to go in some different areas. But I think cash game, it's acceptable to go Bieber.
All right, let's continue on here to Jacob deGrom, 11-2 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Again, a team in the Diamondbacks that doesn't strike out a ton, fairly good against right-handed pitchers on the year. We also know that deGrom, since a rocky start to the Major League season, has been one of the more dynamic pitchers, looking like his old Cy Young self. To point out, Diamondbacks at 21.1% K percentage on the year against righties, but WRC plus at 90, ISO below 200 at 174. So they're not hitting for a ton of power. They're just not striking out a ton. I feel a little bit more confident in deGrom than I do Bieber, simply based on matchup. How do you feel about deGrom at $500 cheaper?
Yeah, I mean, I love deGrom. Yeah, he's such a talented pitcher. He's going to be at home. I mean, right now you have to think about the mindset of the Mets, and they're trying to make the playoffs. So a lot more pressure on these pitchers to make sure that they go out there and not really leave the ball all over the plate. The matchup, like you said, they don't strike out much. A little bit of power here and there in the lineup. But at 11-2, you got to feel comfortable paying for deGrom. And this is not a slate where we've have the Wade Mileys or the Marco Gonzalez's where they're 10, 11K, and you're not necessarily paying for talent, you're paying for the matchup. This is completely a different case. This is where you're paying for the actual talent. So it definitely makes sense. 11-2, I'm right there with you. I like deGrom, and you can't be scared of a team that doesn't strike out much, because at the end of the day, I think talent does overcome these situations more often than none.
All right, let's continue on. So Paxton, you're talking about talent. We've seen James Paxton have some gigantic upswings. Last time out against Texas at Yankee Stadium, 42.6 DraftKings points. He had 12 strikeouts, just one walk. You look back against the Dodgers, an amazing start, 34 DraftKings points, 109 pitches, 11 strikeouts, no walks over 6 2/3. But mixed in are duds against Cleveland and a not-so-great game against his former team, Seattle. And then you sort of oscillate back and forth between great starts and okay starts. Last time facing Boston had, low strikeout total? I know that. He faced them back-to-back weeks. That's what it was. 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, and then previous was a very solid start, but gave up some home runs late. Here we have a righty-laden power bats of Boston. Paxton's at 10-8. I'd just rather get up to deGrom. I don't want to even mess around with James Paxton in this matchup. I'm sure, similar to what you said, talent can win out here. He could go out and give us one of those Dodgers starts, or even the Red Sox start where he struck out 9, maybe not give up the long ball. I just don't think it's worth the necessary risk in this matchup. How do you feel about Paxton?
Yeah, 10-8 is just a little bit too expensive. I think you have to proceed with caution here. At this point, I'd rather pay up the 400 for deGrom, or I would even pivot and pay 400 less for Aaron Nola, who I feel can definitely has a better matchup in my opinion. And just going on the road at Boston, it's like you said, they got a lot of great hitters against left-handed pitching, specifically Bogarts, Martinez. Betts is starting to come around now and have more power against lefties. But I mean, even Devers has power too. So this is something where 10-8 is just too high. It really is. And the inconsistency of Paxton doesn't give me the confidence to pay that 10-8. So I think I probably will be way under the field when it comes to James Paxton.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I have mentioned many times hand building here. He's not even going to be part of my thought process if I have the cash to get up. Or to your point, Nola against the Atlanta Braves is a bit cheaper. Now the Braves do have again a ton of power. We have some of the top offenses in baseball at the top end of our pitching pool here, meaning who the pitchers are facing. But the Braves do strike out a bit more, 23.4% on the year. WRC plus just below 100 at 99, ISO of 189. Clearly some power bats here, but they are more so from the right-hand side. Donaldson and Acuna and the like. Does Nola and his sort of roller coaster ride this season concern you, or do you think this is a prime spot for Nola at 10-4 as your, the fourth highest owned price pitcher as being a better play than Paxton or Eduardo Rodriguez just blown?
Yeah, so I mean, if we're going to compare pitchers here and price points, I think this year Nola is the more talented pitcher than Paxton. And I think in this matchup, I think there are more strikeouts that Nola can take advantage of compared to Boston just because of the matchup and the righty-righty factor as compared to the lefty-righty matchup in Boston. So when I'm looking at this matchup, I'm looking at a few things, and there's a couple bats in the Braves lineup plus the pitcher spot that allows more opportunity for more strikeouts. So I do love Nola in this situation, and I think 10-4 is definitely okay. He gets there. He gets his 6-7 strikeouts a game, and if he gives up a single solo shot or two, I'm okay with that. But if he's going 6 or 7 innings, that's something where I'm going to go ahead and want to pay that. The only thing I will say is if he starts to get in trouble, will he get pulled? Because it's happened quite a few times this year. He gets into 60, 70 pitch count, but he's kind of all over the place. He's walking batters, and they pull him after 4 or 5 innings. So that would probably be my only red flag. But outside of that, when it comes to Nola versus Paxton, 100% I'm going Nola all day.
And to point out over on FanDuel, and I'll pull up Yahoo prices momentarily, Nola is your third highest price pitcher over on FanDuel at 9,800. Then you get Greinke, then Paxton as your fifth highest pitcher, but they're all lumped in 98, 96, and 9,400 respectively. We'll talk about that momentarily. But we do get Eduardo Rodriguez at 9,500 against the Yankees. Here's the thing for me with Rodriguez and Paxton. If you're a tournament player, you're max entering, there's enough upside based on talent, talking Paxton and Rodriguez, for me to understand rostering them, right? Like you have the upside, probably low ownership because of the offense they're going against. So I can justify it, and I can understand it being justified playing Rodriguez or Paxton in this spot. But if you're hand building, you're talking about cash lineups, you're trying to maximize a few handful of lineups, they're just not on the radar for me. And I think that needs to be the way you approach this. Do you agree with Rodriguez in the same way that we were talking about James Paxton before?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. And also, this matchup is a little scary. I mean, there's a lot of power. Now, Edward Encarnacion's back in the lineup too, which he has a lot of power against lefties. It's just not a matchup that I really want to go to. I think if I'm going to want to roll with a lefty in this situation, I think I kind of like the guy in a pitcher's ballpark with maybe a better matchup, even though they don't strike out much, in Baumgartner, at home against Pittsburgh. So with Rodriguez, it's really difficult because he does showcase a lot of glimpse of hope, and he definitely has some talent there. So I'm not going to downplay that. However, though, it's just the Yankees. There's just too much power up and down the lineup, and this is more of a game where I'm going to the bats rather than going to the pitchers. So I just don't see the sense in rostering Rodriguez.
On the year, the Yankees bats, let's just double check this, against lefty pitchers.
They've mashed lefties.
Yeah, they have a 232 ISO, a 121 WRC plus, and a BABIP of 299. Now, taking BABIP across an entire team can sometimes be a dicey number, but still sub 300 on the BABIP at 352 WOBA. And you mentioned you get Encarnacion back, you get Stanton's not in the lineup. Clearly, you do have Gleyber Torres and Judge and Aaron. I can go down down the list there and name the entire lineup, but tons of power. So again, completely justify and understand tournament lineups and going for the upside at lower ownership. I just don't think hand builders should even dance that way because it's just going to be a mess, I think, of a game. I'll double check the spread momentarily. You mentioned Baumgartner. And when I first started doing research on this slate, obviously games at Oracle Park, formerly known as AT&T, stand out to me. I will talk about Trevor Williams in a little bit, I think, as what will be one of the cheaper chalk pitchers on the slate. Bumgarner is not the pitcher he was 4 or 5 years ago, but has been pretty darn good. All of his numbers are in line with projections, meaning his 3.81 ERA and the 4.10 SIERA are within spitting distance of one another. He has an average against of 240, strikeout percentage of 24.3%, but it's 8.87 Ks per nine, and that's who Bumgarner's always been. He's never been Kershaw, or he's never been Scherzer in the 11 or 12 Ks per nine over the course of a season. But he has the ability to dial it up. Now, is a Pittsburgh matchup here going to be the reason he does it? I don't know. This is a team, to your point, that doesn't strike out much. It's a team that is very disciplined when it comes to Ks. They don't walk a ton, though. So it's not a team that is necessarily walking and not striking out. They're just putting the ball in play a lot. So you have to like that in Oracle Park. You have to like a team that puts the ball in play, has a bit of power with Josh Bell, but maybe that's mitigated a bit by Oracle Park. And Bumgarner has a decent outing here. Do you like Bumgarner in this mix between Rodriguez, Hendricks, Greinke as being somebody that you're on for today's slate?
So in the price point against Rodriguez, I definitely would go Bumgarner. But Hendricks has a nice little matchup against one of the best teams that we like to target in the San Diego Padres. So as we know, they're a top 3 strikeout team in baseball, and especially against righties. And Hendricks is going to be in a ballpark that kind of favors him. And there's just a lot of K upside there. And as the year has gone on and the injuries and the trades that have taken place, the Padres don't have the same power that they did in the beginning of the year. There's no more Reyes. Renfroe has been hurt here and there. Tatis is out for the season. And you can kind of see this Padres team just dwindling away. I mean, they just have these weak bats like Garcia and Naylor. And, it's just a team that's not scary. So when we're looking at these 3 as a collective unit, Hendricks all day definitely is going to be someone that I want to roster and probably be over the field on. He's 8,800, and he's not a good K per 9 guy. Okay. However, though, he sometimes is able to have the talent to pick his spots, and going against a team that's prone to strikeouts, and he'll also have the pitcher in the lineup as well. I love this, and I think 8,800 is more than doable for Hendricks.
I agree. I think Hendricks. So it's a good pitching slate. I think you have a lot to choose from. Lots of ways you can go. Mention Hendricks. I think Bumgarner's in the mix. I think if you look over on FanDuel, it's similar pricing to where you can make similar decisions on based on ownership, right? I know we talk about it a lot on here, but if you're not a member of Awesemo.com, one of the things that Awesemo has offered and has offered pretty much from the jump is ownership projections. And are they 100% accurate? Hell no. No, they're not. And I don't think anyone pretends they are. They're ballpark, though, and they give you a sense of where the industry is leaning. Are they going to hit it to the decimal point? No, but again, it gives you the sense of where numbers are starting to lead, what Alex's projections plus ownership looks like, and how they think all of it's going to shape out. And so if you see someone like Bumgarner at a 5% compared to a Hendricks at 20% or vice versa, that should give you an indication of, well, I like these guys almost equally the same. Let me take the guy at much lower ownership. And so if you're not a member and you want to check something like that out, one, there are some days that we give that away for free. We give sort of a sampling. You can log on and see it in front of the paywall. But you can get in now, 50% off your first month. You can also cancel after your first month. I don't suggest it. We're in NFL season. NBA's around the corner. We have great content. But you can check it out. And I think the ownership projections will sort of change your mind on sticking around a little while longer over at Awesemo.com. Zach Greinke is, again, one of those names that I'm fine rostering on this slate. I think that the matchup with the Oakland Athletics is, again, one that doesn't have a ton of strikeouts, but the price point of 8,400 for Greinke is fine. But I almost rather have Jordan Lyles here. And that's not a talent thing. It's just simply matchup and ballpark stand out distinctly for me for Jordan Lyles against the Miami Marlins, 8,200. Now, is that 500 to 1,000 more expensive than I prefer to have Lyles be? Probably, but that's every pitcher on DraftKings this season. So where do you stand? You get Greinke, you get Lyles. We can get into Fires, Foltynewicz as we roll through here. But do you like either of them? Do you prefer one over the other? How do they stack up against one another?
Man, it's so tough because, you think of Greinke and it's like, man, he has so much potential to be an elite pitcher, but for some reason he just never gets there. And it's just very frustrating, I guess I could say. And looking at this price point, I'm looking at it and it's 8,200 and or 8,400, and I'm thinking, this is a price point that I would want to pay for Greinke. At the end of the day, he is someone who does have the potential to throw some amazing stuff and get you that 7-8 strikeouts. And Oakland doesn't strike out too much. However, though, once again, you're paying 8,400 for a pitcher that does have potential and that does have talent. So in this situation, it's interesting that you said Lyles, because he's 8,200. He's facing a very weak Marlins team that does strike out a lot, and the ballpark is going to favor him heavily. So this little toss-up right here is kind of difficult. But if we're talking talent, obviously we know Greinke is a way more talented pitcher than Lyles. Yep. So I mean, it really just comes down to then the matchup. And obviously Lyles has a great matchup. But the real question is with Lyles is, does he have the strikeout talent to go ahead and pick apart that Miami offense that we know is relatively weak? So it's hard to say, but I think in this situation, I'm going to go Greinke.
Okay, I think I'm Lyles here. The biggest thing for Lyles for me has been the home runs on the year, and I think this Marlins team just doesn't have the power at that park to do any damage to him. I think the K's will be there for Lyles in this matchup. Greinke's fine. Again, there haven't been many pitchers I've been negative on other than Paxton and Rodriguez, and maybe that's me not taking a stand, but I think that Greinke here is in a okay spot. I like Lyles better and I think has more upside. I'm going to take a quick look here at any Vegas totals just to see what Vegas is telling us thus far. Yankees.
Lyles has a 24.1K rate this year. So, he definitely, it's definitely a great situation for him. I think I just get a little bit nervous about the price. I wish he was more so like 7,200.
Agreed.
But I mean, obviously I'm going to have shares of Lyles. It's just, I think the potential that Greinke has at 8,400, I feel like is definitely worth paying.
Adam and I have talked a couple of times about I think you and I talked about it too, about Greinke throwing an 87-mile-an-hour fastball and an 88-mile-an-hour changeup because he defies physics. And that's just fantastic to see. I will point out Astros and Athletics, -160 in favor of Houston, but a 9.5 over-under. So a slightly inflated run total there for the Oakland A's, whereas it's -175 for Milwaukee, an 8.5 over under. So Lyles getting a little bit of favorite odds, and it makes total sense. Matchup and park for Lyles does benefit him there. Yankees and Red Sox 10 over under with a -110 for Paxton, so close to a pick 'em there. Mets and Diamondbacks 7.5, -230 for New York. Braves and Phillies -130 for Philly, 8.5. Might as well just run through all these while I'm here. 8 over under. San Francisco -155 for Bumgarner, -160 for Bieber, 9 over under against Patrick Sandoval and the Angels. And then we have -135 for the Cubs and 8 over under between Cal Quantrill and Kyle Hendricks. So some low run totals on this slate. Probably why we're talking about so many pitchers that we might be interested in. But we're getting to the low end of the pool, and this is probably where the rubber meets the road, whatever sort of terrible cliche you want to use, because if we are trying to find one of those higher end pitchers and we are trying to get to Boston and Yankees bats, and I haven't checked fully on offense prices, but they've been up in the 5Ks all year long, we're going to have to find some sort of savings somewhere. So as we look through Fiers, Boltonevich, Patrick Sandoval, Quantrill at 6,700, Trevor Williams at 63, Merrill Kelly, and Duggar at 5,500. I lean quickly to Williams simply because of matchup and park, but he hasn't been all that great. Boltonevich has shown some major upside, but Philly has a ton of power bats that I think could do him in pretty quickly. What do you like here on the cheap end? Are any of these names standing out to you as potential plays to pair up with a DeGrom or pair up with a Bumgarner or whomever else and save some cash to get some offensive bats?
Yeah, I think Cale Quantrill is definitely in play. I think we've seen a Cubs offense that obviously is scary at times, and they do possess a lot of power, but we've also seen a Cubs team that is striking out one of the highest K rates over the last 2 months, almost 25% against righties. So it's just this for Cale Quantrill, I feel like there's opportunity there. I think it's also a ballpark that favors him. This Chicago team, there's injuries right now, right? We got Baez that's injured. I think was it Hayward that's injured now too? I forget.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so I mean, this right here is it's a weaker Cubs team. Right now with these guys out of the lineup, and we got Albert Almora in the lineup. We have Addison Russell in there, both who's been striking out a lot lately too. So I mean, if they roll out a lineup where it's heavy righty and you just have Rizzo coming from the left side, and maybe we'll see Schwarber. But other than that, I mean, we're looking at a price point that at 6,700 compared to everyone else. And I know probably people are going to go pay for Trevor Williams, but I think the Giants bats are way different than they were in the beginning of the year. So I actually like the Giants to stack against Trevor Williams tomorrow, believe it or not. But 6,700 for Quantrill, I could see myself doing that. There's really nothing else. Duger maybe, but Merrill Kelly no shot. I'm gonna like the Mets here. Duger could be interesting. 5,500 against the Brewers. They do strike out a lot, but yeah, I like Quantrill. I feel good about it. I really like the matchup for him.
All right, I like that call. I don't agree with it, but I like the call. I like that you're going for it there. The Cubs offense. It is San Diego, so that's a decent point. The Petco hasn't been as pitcher dominant as it was 5 or 6 years ago with some of the modifications they made there a couple of years back. But you're going to have to find somebody. And again, talking ownership percentages, not to harp on that too much, but you're probably going to get Quantrill at much lower owned percentages. And if you have him projected in any way to be similar, if not better than Trevor Williams, that's a no-brainer. I mean, that's a no-brainer to roster him rather than going to a much higher owned Trevor Williams. And this is a guess. I haven't seen any sort of early projections for ownerships or what we might see. So we talked some of the bats. I will say this. I want to go back through quickly here. I will probably end up making 5 to 10 lineups, and I would probably wager right now that I will have a decent amount of Lyles, Hendricks, and Nola. Now, DeGrom, if I can fit him, great. Bieber, I'm not going to have. So Bieber, Paxton, and Rodriguez, I will probably have 0 of. Absolutely 0, whether in 5 lineups, 10 lineups on DK. Then I'll say that between Nola, DeGrom, Hendricks, and Lyles is where I'm probably going to lean the most. I could see having some Trevor Williams. And I'll look more into Cal Quantrill because I think that is a reasonable take there. Who do you see right now looking back across that grouping or all the pitchers? Who do you think right now, as a guess, you'd have the most exposure to when all is said and done and lock comes around 4 o'clock East Coast time because you live out there on the sunny coast?
I like Bieber. I like DeGrom. Highest exposure right now. I think obviously I'm going to attack Hendricks. So I think Hendricks might be one of my highest owned potentially preliminary till tomorrow. But other than that, I think I might be spread out across the board. I do like Nola, but once again, we're going to have to look more into these matchups as the day goes on and before the slate block. But I really do like Hendricks, and I feel like I will be, either with the field or over the field with him.
Aaron Judge hit the Yankees' 268th homer of the season tonight, breaking last year's team record for this season, and obviously Major League Baseball record as well. So still 3 weeks to go. I have a feeling they're going to add on to that a little bit more. The Twins and the Yankees could both hit over 300 home runs on the season, which is just absolutely insane.
That's wild.
I've been told chicks dig the long ball. I don't know if people have heard that before. No, just kidding. Let's talk quickly about offense. So we've touched on this a little bit thus far. I will try to see Yankees and Red Sox bats, try to figure out where I can find a couple of one-offs or two-offs to build power bats in Fenway. The game already, I think, is 6-4, if not 7-4. They're going to score runs. These two teams bludgeon each other. You know that's going to happen. Yes, there can be the one-off low percentage opportunity where this is a pitcher's duel. I just don't see it happening. I will also say that Houston against Fiers stands out to me as a potential big outing for the Astros, and I know Fiers has been pretty good on the year. Philadelphia against Fultonevich, another one where I might lean. And then I'll say the Mets bats might be one-offs for me, the Pete Alonsos of the world, or depending on how cheap some of their outfield bats are against Merrill Kelly, who can get a little flat with his fastball from time to time. What do you got from an offensive perspective?
Yeah, I really like the Houston call. They've been on fire. A lot of power in that lineup, 230 ISO in the last 2 months. I think they had the league's best WRC plus at 132. And I mean, it's not even close. And the biggest thing with them too is they're not really striking out a lot. The last 2 months, they're the third lowest strikeout rate against righties in all of baseball. So Mike Fierce coming back to Houston. I think we've already had that revenge narrative though. But I really do like Houston with that call. Outside of that, I do like the Mets at home against Merrill Kelly. I like Pete Alonso too. I could see myself having high exposure to him, but I also like Conforto in this position. And I'm wondering if Brandon Nimmo would be in the lineup against the lefty-righty. He's going to probably be fairly priced, so he does possess power. So I really like that. Outside of that, I do like Cleveland against Sandoval. And Sandoval is someone who I do like to attack, and is someone who I feel like is a great matchup for Cleveland because there's a lot of great hitters in this lineup that love to crush lefties, specifically Oscar Mercado. I love him against lefties. Also love Santana against lefties as well, and Puig. So a lot of power in that lineup, and I think I could see myself rostering Cleveland tomorrow.
I did pointing out Nimmo's 3,600 on DK. Robinson Cano, who's been in and out of the lineup since coming back from injury, is 3,900. So you have some power bats there that might be in the middle of the lineup at sub 4K prices on DK, and that is worth checking out for sure. With that said, I think that's going to wrap it up. I will remind you, we have the strategy shows all week long. We have the deeper dive. We have a changing schedule. I'll also point that out as NFL has rolled out. So you'll want to check in and make sure you're up to date on who and where and why and when, all those wonderful journalism questions, when the shows are happening. But you have tons of content available to you. You have the early bird tomorrow morning. It's EMAC and Adam. Then you get Lofty and myself. Maybe. I know he's in and out of the pod simply because he's doing so many shows. But you get the pod no matter what. We'll be covering baseball through the end of the season, come hell or high water. Or just terrible tilts about NFL on Sunday nights. We will be sure to be with you each and every morning, giving you Major League Baseball's best. Find Chris on Twitter at Chris Randone. Find me at Dan Strafford. Of course, it's at Osmo_com, Osmo MLB, Osmo NFL. There are giveaways happening almost regularly over at Osmo_com for 3 months or 6 months or a full year of subscription. So you want to follow that and make sure to try to get in a free subscription as well, because as I learned in college, nothing is better than free stuff. With that said, we wish you the best of luck on Monday, and we'll be back with you tomorrow morning right here on the DFS Early Bird.